Welcome to FilmSnoop's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the 2018 post-apocalyptic film A Quiet Place. This film falls under the drama, horror, and thriller categories and centers around a family trying to survive in a world where human beings are being hunted by creatures with a terrifyingly powerful sense of hearing. With that, let's begin our commentary.
So A Quiet Place's script is decent, but it's not at all the thing that drives the movie forward in terms of its narrative structure. There's a lot of sign language usage, which makes sense given the story's context, but the writing itself is not going to blow you out of the water. Instead, imagery, in my opinion, is what really drives this movie forward. The use of the sign language as a form of imagery is absolutely fantastic. The words themselves are not as important as the meaning behind them and the actions that they represent.
I honestly, maybe found the script more impressive than you, because I liked that it was stripped. I honestly thought that was more impressive than a script that's just full of stuff. But I agree with you that the images and the acting are telling the story rather than just characters talking, all the dialogue.
It's not a bunch of monologuing.
Yeah. It's really the acting that makes the big difference. And I thought the moments of dialogue, even though there was maybe 2 scenes that had dialogue.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
They were brief and they were effective.
Yep.
So, I don't know. It's interesting calling it a script when there's very little actual dialogue, but I found it really effective, so it's just me.
I agree completely.
Alright, moving on. To viewability. And for me, I give this a strong score because in terms of viewability, there's no confusion here. It's pretty viewable regardless of, your age or your interests, I find. I'm also not a fan of horror movies, right? But I'm able to watch and enjoy this, so I don't know. I give that, for those reasons, a high viewability rating. I thought it was just the right amount of mystery because there's still unanswered questions and stuff that you need to find out, but again, you're not watching this what the hell is happening the whole time. You actually can follow the story. I obviously wouldn't recommend this movie to young children, but high viewability. I think even if you're a bit of a younger audience member or not a fan of horror movies, you can still watch and enjoy this.
I think it's a movie that'll appeal to a lot of different people. It's got kind of that horror aspect, but it's not a jump scare heavy movie, which is something that I really appreciated. There's a lot more atmosphere, so you're watching this, not like you're going to get, hey, there's a bloody face on the screen. I think that it's a movie that pretty much anyone can enjoy, just for what it is. Moving on to the next one, pacing. So, I really love the pacing in this movie. There's not a lot of moments that really break up the pacing a whole lot. And if the pacing does slow, it's more as a tension-building tool than a we didn't know what to put in here. The story doesn't really match up well. So I thought the pacing was absolutely fantastic, and it was used very effectively to build up the terror of the monsters themselves.
No, I agree. The word I like to use is dynamic, because I agree with you that it's not the movie isn't a stalemate, and it's not even a constant incline either. It's got kind of roller coaster-esque moments where it's up and downs. I take issue with movies that are too action-packed. I call it action overload, because it's the whole movie is either action or it starts off slow and then the whole second half of the movie is just pure action.
Yeah.
I didn't find that with this. It's equally balanced and interspersed. So I would agree about the very good pacing. I, for one thing, really like that there's no opening narrative explaining the situation. So, as an English major, the term that we use in literature is it starts in medias res, which basically means that there's high intrigue or high entertainment from the get-go, because it just starts in the middle of the story. Yeah. It's not this is a typical horror movie film or thriller, or even an alien movie where they're in the beginning.
Yeah.
It was loud, and then suddenly,
it got louder.
You know what I mean? Where there's the black screen and you just hear someone talking, a narrative that explains it all before the movie starts.
What's that called? Exposition?
Yes, thank you.
Exposition.
There's none of that, and there's none of the text scrolling across the screen like Star Wars, where it's this and that before you even get to see the movie. Does that make sense?
It
just starts.
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you. Glad we agree. So, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's something I like in movies when it just starts in medias res. I thought throughout the story there's good uses of elements of literature as well, like foreshadowing is used a lot in this movie, which I can't speak too much to without giving things away, but it's
which we'll do later, but we'll give you a warning.
Yeah, we'll give you a warning for the spoilers. I also wanted to add, as maybe a more, like, not negative note, but something that people might disagree with on me, is that some people might be intrigued by the lack of a clear origin story for these creatures. I don't think it's necessary to the film to have that origin story, but I also know some people, when they watch movies, they hate having unanswered questions.
I think it's a mix, because it depends how you decide to look at it. Right? So you can see an unanswered question like that, my apologies, and you might say, okay, well, they did this for a specific reason, right? The creature is meant to be this scary thing that we don't have an explanation for. It's meant to be like this fringe element that we can't explain. But you got to be careful that it's not we don't have a good story for it. With the story, I really like the story. I love the fact that sound was such a big part of the movie, and that these creatures their greatest strength was sound, but their greatest weakness was also sound. But I thought the story was actually pretty uplifting. Family comes together, forgiveness, there's perseverance, and I thought it was a good story. So the general theme of the movie, I would say, would be family and acceptance, specifically acceptance of the past. But for me, the theme was not huge throughout the movie. You could watch the movie without focusing on themes that it's trying to get across, and it wouldn't really lessen your enjoyment of it. Mm-hmm. It'd be hard to ignore the themes going through the movie. There are a couple very powerful moments. But I do feel that's kind of something you fall into with horror movies. It's more difficult to have that consistent theme, and at times it can be easily overshadowed, but it was a pretty basic theme overall, but I think it did its job. It worked well with the story.
I definitely agree, because I said something kind of similar. I actually made it even more specific, not just horror movies, but specifically survivalist kind of movies.
Yeah.
I find that the theme is so murky, especially if it's just, we're a bunch of people, let's escape this tornado or this flood. Like, those kind of movies, I find it's,
it's more about the survival than the actual message.
And Hollywood does this. They try to work in the themes, like make it about family or romance on top of this survival thing. So I think that's always the case in survivalist movies. I personally hate survivalist movies for that reason, because it's just, there's a giant flood, let's run away. And that's the whole movie.
Start. That would be your opinion. See,
sorry.
I'm kind of like, they can have good themes. I do agree it's more difficult to have that kind of theme in a survival movie, because survival is almost the theme of the movie. It's not quite, but it kind of is.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. I guess we can say survival is a theme.
Survival is a theme.
Even if it's not one I personally like. We're supposed to be saving our opinions for the end, so my bad. But
survival is the theme.
Yeah, that was deep. No, but I would agree with you that it's kind of about how familial love can conquer all these different hardships that they have. Like, in the end, it's about saving the family.
Including 6 foot tall
aliens. Yeah, they're really big. Okay, so now we are moving on to the acting part. And this is my favorite part to talk about, just because I think we both really liked the main actor, who is also the director, which I find, 2 times as impressive almost, because he's directing the film. He's also doing a really strong acting job.
Yeah,
the mom's character I actually liked better, more than the how can I say that? So I like the mom's character better than the dad's character.
Do you like the character or the acting?
Yeah, so I like the mom's character better.
Okay.
But I thought his acting was just slightly better. I thought he was very strong. Emily Blunt, I think, did a great job. I just lean more towards her maybe because I liked her character more. I thought she was a really strong character. So she maybe just had a cooler / better role to play because this mom is a total badass, not giving anything away.
No, she's absolutely crazy. There's a couple scenes in the movie where you're like, yeah, I could not do that. No. I liked the dad's facial expressions throughout the entire movie. It was, in a movie where dialogue is, I'm going to say less important, and I'm sure some people will disagree, but when I think that the dialogue and what was signed is less important than how it was portrayed, his expressions when he's acting took me over the edge, right? It wasn't just, the lines are really good, he's doing a really good job reading, the writing is good. No, there's a couple times when you saw him and you could see the genuine terror his character is supposed to be portraying, which I think was fantastic. I think the mom did a good job acting. I disagree a little. I disagree a little bit. There was nothing that jumped out at me. There was no moments with her where I was like, that is fantastic acting right there. I think the dad and the daughter stole the show for me, but the mom and the son did not take away from the film in any way. They didn't enhance it to me, but they kept it pretty standard, pretty good.
Okay, well, it is worthwhile noting. We're not going to fight, but it's worthwhile noting that they all got nominations for acting awards.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh.
They all got nominations, but the mom is the only one who won.
Yeah.
For outstanding acting. So that's worthwhile noting.
We're also not like film majors.
No, but I'm just saying that's just something to make a note of because, like you said, we're not the experts. But I would agree. I think at the very least, the girl who played the daughter deserves something.
I liked her character,
which is, I mean, that sounds weird coming from me because again, the dad was probably the one who had the best acting in my opinion. But I'm just impressed by when it's child acting because I wrote this in my notes. Child acting is sometimes so awful. Like, so cringeworthy.
Better than anything we could do, but
still so bad. But I'm just saying, it's not always the best, and here I thought they did pretty good. I thought the girl especially was outstanding, but the younger brother, he did decent. He held his own with all these strong actors in the movie, so... I do want to say a quick thing about romance here, because portraying, like, having a romantic scene with zero corny dialogue, that's impressive.
They did well with that.
That's impressive because there's that one scene with the mom and the dad, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's just a scene with the mom and the dad, and it's meant to kind of portray their relationship, their romance, and they do this whole scene without talking. It's all acting. But
still, like, when you watch that scene, the dad's face, right? In his eyes, you've got this mix of hope and fear, this concern for what's happening. It is...
I'm glad you mentioned eyes, because he has really expressive eyes, for sure.
He has great eyes.
Yeah. The girl actress, she's deaf in real life. That's worthwhile noting.
Yes.
Which you'd never know that watching the movie, because usually, they make sure that if an actress isn't deaf, that she goes through all of the practice and the training or whatever she needs to do to make it seem legit. But it is worthwhile noting that they intentionally hired a deaf actress. And
it spreads the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as a viewer, it feels more real than someone pretending to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with that. And I just want to say a brief note about conveying tone with sign language. Because that's like a mind melt. How do you even convey tone with sign language? But somehow they managed to do that, in my opinion. They have their own style of signing, and they use it to convey their tone, which I thought must be really hard, especially if you don't know sign language before, being cast in this role.
No, I agree completely. Now we just need the dad to be able to sign, "Don't take that tone with me, young lady," and the movie would be a perfect 100. So moving on with engagements. For the first-time viewer, this movie is going to grab your attention. It's really fun to watch, especially with a group of people. There are a couple moments that will have you on the edge of your seat. You will be actually nervous watching this movie. And it's a nice mix of things. It's not like, I'm just waiting for the next jump scare. And this movie does a very good job of, there's not too many of those, like we said earlier, but you're on the edge of your seat. You're anxious to see what happens to these characters. But upon subsequent viewings, I feel the movie loses some of that engagement. There wasn't anything there to kind of, oh, this was a really amazing scene, and this shot was just above and beyond what's expected. The movie is beautiful, but there was nothing out there where I'm like, I just can't wait to see this scene again. Right? So for me, it loses a little bit upon subsequent viewings, but to each their own.
I don't know if I don't fully agree. I thought that you can appreciate this just as well as the first time personally. I think the idea of pause in the movie is perfectly executed. Because the action, like I said, it's not all in the second half of the film. You have, showing these family scenes, and then you have a brief moment of action with the father and son, and then you have a brief moment of action with the mom going on, and then it's a little scattered again, everything's calm, and then there's another moment. So I think that lends itself to the level of engagement, and I didn't feel like the second viewing took away from it. I don't know.
I really wish we'd been able to watch this movie in theaters.
Oh yeah. The audience is just as afraid of noise as the characters are, which I think is hard. Because you're watching a movie.
Yeah.
But when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, oh my god, that was loud.
Well,
the monsters are going to hear them.
We whisper talked, I think, for good chunks of the movie. And yeah, theaters, this thing would have just been amazing. Mm-hmm. Assuming you had a good theater group. I will say that. If there was this isn't a movie I'd watch in a busy place or with people that are going to kind of shout out or talk or be on their phones throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, not a party film.
It's not a party film.
Not a 15 teenagers in a basement film.
It's a popcorn with, a friend
lights
or a buddy,
off.
Lights turned off, snuggling on the couch so you can scream together.
Oh yeah. Visuals and sound. So this is obviously really important in a movie that's got to do with silence. I actually want to take a minute to talk about visuals because I noticed there's lots of attention paid to lighting.
Yes.
Which is interesting. So there's all these really beautiful shots with, half shadow, partial lighting, with people silhouetted with a bit of a nice background. There's lots of those kind of things. And then lighting also plays a role with the use of lighting around the farmhouse where they live.
There were a lot of really good shots with the visuals, right? So some of my favorite shots were actually earlier in the film.
Oh yeah.
And in the way they introduce, and minor spoilers here, but the way they introduce the fact that one of the main characters is deaf, there is a scene that I think does this super effectively, where you will hear the audio while the camera's looking at another character. You can see the look on their face. You can tell they can hear it. Mm-hmm. It pans over to the deaf character, and there's nothing. Mm-hmm. There's a look of confusion as she's trying to figure out why everyone else is panicking. And I think that's a great way to show that the character is deaf.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was a fantastic shot.
Yeah, but they continue to reinforce it throughout the movie. They don't just say, oh, here's a scene to show that the character can't hear, and then we're not going to touch it for the rest of the movie. They keep adding to that fact.
Yeah.
And that being said, the soundtrack here is also dynamic, because I found the moments where it's completely silent are just as important as the parts where the score is, in there with the visuals. Right?
I agree.
So I agree with you that I like how it portrays the daughter's perspective.
I thought the sound was really good. It wasn't. You're not watching an Avengers movie. You're not watching something with this, big over the top, soundtrack moments, epic fight scenes. Right? It's got a couple tense moments, and the sound does a fantastic job of kind of reinforcing that. But you're not going to listen to something and say, "Oh, I recognize this," right? This is the iconic music of the film. It doesn't have anything like that. But the sound is still amazing. Mm-hmm. It does a great job of adding to the atmosphere and creating a complete picture, if you will.
It was perfectly suited for the movie. And it won a lot of awards. It won the majority of the awards won by this movie were for the sound.
Kind of, the movie's focusing on creatures that hunt by sound and characters who have to live in a post-apocalyptic world where they can't make sound. Let's give the movie a bunch of awards for sound. So next thing we're going to be talking about is the general presentation of the movie. I already talked about this a little bit with some of the shots that I really like. Overall, the presentation, it's just solid.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to talk about the attention to detail in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I was engaged in the setup. Like, you're engaged in seeing how the family has all these solutions to avoiding making noise.
It also highlights the issues you'd have in a world where, like, we're not kidding when we say these creatures are hypersensitive to noise.
Mm-hmm.
It is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
They can hear you from miles away. Something as simple as, well, my buddy snores. Oh, not anymore, because that's going to bring the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
They have to come up with a lot of very clever ways to survive.
Yeah. And they show it in the movie. They have attention to that detail in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So showing the sand that they have to scatter everywhere, or the like painted floorboards,
To hide where to walk.
tiny little details like that to me made a big difference in terms of the presentation of the movie. I do have one more note about the presentation, which is just that I liked that the monsters were not central. They weren't like, the whole movie wasn't just, let's show you the monster, let's show you the monster, let's show you the monster.
I'd say the monsters are probably on screen 3-4 minutes of the runtime.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
so it's
mostly
not like,
towards the end.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that this whole production isn't about the effects in the monster.
Look what we made, it's scary, it's for fun.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just one thing I wanted to add. So we should move on to the very last one, which is just the production. And we kind of talked about camera already. So we talked about how those were really well done, particularly the close-up shots, like the feet on the sand.
Yeah.
Just beautiful. So those we've already talked about. We've talked about the lighting. And then the one only other thing I want to add about production is how effective the start and the ending are.
Yes.
I think it kind of ties the film back in a loop almost.
It does.
Because both the beginning and the end of the film are very abrupt and unexpected. And I found it a little non-traditional, you know? Like some movies, I kind of mentioned with the narration, like they try and kind of ease you in.
Yeah.
And then they try and fade you out.
Yeah.
And this movie, we're starting on a abrupt high note and we're ending on an abrupt high note. And I just like that.
It's kind of a nice cliffhanger ending where you kind of like, you know, try to guess what probably happened.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Yeah, so I think without further ado, we can go straight into the scores. If you want to start us off.
I would love to. So for the scores, we score all of the categories out of 5, double the numbers, and we have a total score out of 100 using our 10 categories. I think that's a really cool story. It's a really neat idea. For me, at least, return views not as good, especially when you know what's coming, for a grand total of 79 out of 100. That is a passing grade in our class.
Yeah, so it's worth noting, like, if most of the stuff is circled in the 4, that's really good. Like, I think it'd be impossible for a movie to get all 5s. So mine is very similar to yours. It's all pretty good. I actually gave production masterful. Because for me, production is the directing, the cameras, the editing, and the screenplay. And all of that, I thought was as good as it possibly could have been for this type of movie. I thought it was all perfect.
I will allow it this one time.
So our scores are actually close. Mine is an 80 out of 100, so...
So we're going to give this a average of 79.5 out of 100. Again, no movie from us I think will ever get a full 100. If you have movies you want us to give a 100 to, be free to put them down in the comments. We'll give them a look-see, but don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but yeah. That'd be a very rare film, for sure.
So, just for a general comparison for any viewers out there, Media Snoop score is 79.5. Rotten Tomato gives this a 95%. And IMDb gives it a 76. So we're a little bit closer to the second one there, but
we're pretty in the middle.
Pretty in the middle.
Yeah. Okay, in terms of the genre breakdown, we've pretty much agreed on action and adventure has about 4 stars, because there's lots of that, lots of action. For mystery and suspense, we gave it 3 stars, which is like, it's regular to the movie, but it's not a key genre. The same thing with sci-fi futuristic, because this is post-apocalyptic, so there's a little bit of that, but again, not key. And then the only other one we have was horror and thriller, which for sure is the major genre, so that one earns it 5 stars total for that genre. So that's just the 4 basic genres you can consider. If those are the kind of ones that you're into, then this would be a good movie fit for you. And then moving on just to our personal opinions. This is just a little bit we're going to do. We kind of talked a little about our opinions. It's hard to stay unbiased. I, as a reader and like an English major, so someone who's focused more on books than on film, I like that it follows the show don't tell rule. And I enjoyed just overall that this is a horror thriller genre, which is not usually my thing, but I really did like this movie. So I think it's a rare movie that can be outside of your usual genre that you like, and that you can enjoy, if that makes sense.
I really like this movie. I think that it definitely deserves a view. I think that it definitely deserves a lot of the accolades that it's received. For me, there was something holding this movie back from being, a classic that you're going to watch with your kids, 15 years from now. But for the time being, I think it's fantastic. I think that it scratches the itch, so to speak, of a good horror movie, right?
And I agree with you that this kind of movie is very in right now.
It is
like it might not be a classic, but it's very in. Like what with Bird Box just came out on Netflix, and we're actually doing this review in preparation for the newest Netflix film, The Silence, right?
Yes.
I believe that's what it's called, and that's coming out next week. And the premise of this film is so similar that we thought, hey, we do this one first and see if we can compare the two. So it's obviously very in if all these movies of a similar premise are starting to come out all around the same time.
In the gaming world, we would call this an indie movie. Kind of. Higher budget than you'd expect, but it's willing to take a couple of risks that you won't see with a lot of big blockbuster films. Which is nice. Mm-hmm. It's always nice to have those.
Alright, awesome. So I think without further ado, we can head right into the spoilers, and this is where we can just rant about stuff that actually happened in the movie that we're going to give away because there's some things that we either have questions about or don't agree with.
Watch the movie. If you don't want to hear the spoilers, go watch the movie, come back, share our thoughts, tell me how wrong we are. But last warning, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. People are stupid. But when I watch a movie, I always place myself in the shoes of the characters that I'm watching, right? I kind of decide, is this the course of action I would take? Is it not? And there's a couple of choices in this movie that I don't really understand. For one, how quickly the Earth becomes devastated. Right? Unless there are millions of these things, we're led to believe that by day 89, not even 3 months, or on the very edge of 3 months in, the world is basically gone. Right? This family seems to be completely alone in the world. We have no idea what happened to everyone else. We see a town that is just devoid of all signs of life. Fast forward to a year and a half later, we see a couple things that say that life might still be out there, but it's not really explored. Like, there's a scene where the dad lights a fire on top of the silo, and we see fires lit off in the distance.
Yeah, to me that says other people.
I don't know if that's meant to be like, this is my perimeter, blah blah blah. If I see a fire go out, I don't know what effect that would serve. But to me that says there are other people. So the question in my mind is, why not start a community? Right? The obvious answer would just be, well, that's too loud.
Yeah.
But would your survival not be better if you had a multitude of people? The other thing that really got me was location. I think the farm is a great place for this. I would not do this in a city. I would get out of the city ASAP. I would go to a beach. Or I would go to an island. Or I would go to some place near water.
I never even thought of that. An island? Go to an island.
I don't know if these things... We see a scene where they dive underwater. We don't know if these things can swim.
Very well, at least.
Right?
But still, it's an island. At the very least, if something hears you, it has to swim.
It has to swim
fair distance to get to you first.
You go to a small island or coastal place, you grow potatoes so that they don't jut out of the ground and block your view, and if you see something coming, you hop on your boat. Or, and this is something I think it would take a lot more preparation to do, and there's probably a whole lot of reasons it wouldn't work. In the movie, it's shown that loud sounds drown out quieter sounds. Right? Done specifically with a waterfall, which I think is a great scene, as it's one of the few really loud scenes throughout the movie. Why not set up camp there? You have access to water. You have access to food in terms of fish. You could probably set up small crops around the area, especially if you're willing to take the risk of felling a couple trees yes, it would make a lot of noise, but it might be covered if you do it in a really ingenious way that monsters might not be able to hear you. Right? To me, that would have been a solution that would have been relatively easy. You don't want to live in fear for the rest of your life, but you have this natural place. If you are loud enough to sit with your son at the top of a waterfall and scream at the top of your lungs, you have enough protection to light a fire, chat, play a game of Monopoly, something like that. And for me, as you can tell, that was something that really bugged me.
I can tell. That was like a very, very long explanation of what you'd do if you were in this movie.
That was the rant. You're gonna get one every single video. That would be me.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to talk about what you would do. My spoilers are more like stuff that happened that I'm just like, why? Like the boy, we talked about this, the boy at the very back of the lineup, at the very beginning of the movie.
I would not do
They leave the youngest son at the back of the line. Why?
Here's the thing. Kids are dumb.
But so are these parents, apparently.
And this comes from people who work with kids. Kids are stupid. Right? It's just the way they are. It's their genetic makeup. When we are young, we are dumb. You don't leave someone who is arguably, the weakest link in terms of, strength, running, carrying, speed, everything, right? Mm-hmm. Intelligence. He is, your most vulnerable member of your pack. You don't leave the most vulnerable member of your pack at the back of the line. Mm-hmm. I realized there was a sick kid, but get the mom back there or something.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
She can walk with him.
So that bothered me, and then I was wondering about the birth. Like, it's obvious the mom is a doctor, and she could see her birth coming.
I think could be neat.
I'm pretty sure, I read a summary that said she was a doctor, they never say outright, obviously, but just based on, the way she was checking up on herself and, taking her blood pressure and calculating and whatever she was doing.
It's very lucky for the plot.
But, I don't know, the birth... I get that they probably can't, do it surgically, put her to sleep and do the surgery, the dad's not a doctor. So I get that she has to probably have birth the usual way, but there didn't seem to be much of a setup for when she starts screaming. I realized they didn't expect the monster to be in the house with her, but there didn't seem a plan for that, which surprised me because there's a plan for the baby.
Yeah.
There's the box with the oxygen mask for the baby, but they don't have a setup for the mom who's going to be wailing and screaming and giving birth.
I thought the oxygen mask was fantastic.
Genius.
It was one of those, I saw it early in the movies, and I was kind of like, I have absolutely no idea what you're for.
That was the foreshadowing.
Even around the teddy bear, I'm like,
I have
no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes up. That is a good point. I don't know what they would have done. They kind of showed that their house is... I would call it semi.
I don't want to go on too long of a rant about this.
Yeah.
But there didn't seem to be a plan for the mom. And then on top of that, the birth also bothered me because it was so fast. Women do not give birth that fast.
I have very little knowledge or expertise in this matter, but if it's that, we saw, we don't have a time frame. If all births are 20 minutes, then... That's great.
All I'm saying is, even though it's her fourth, I know it's a movie, so for most people this doesn't bug them.
Yeah, that's just nitpicking, by the way.
But yeah, people just do not give birth that fast. It was 10 minutes.
It was
birth. No.
She's a champ. In a bathtub by herself, trying to keep quiet. There's a monster. She just gives birth.
Yeah, that's a badass monster.
Just slow clap for that lady.
And then the very last thing that bugged me was the scene where the dad is protecting the kids, right? He sends them to the truck.
Yes.
And he's just standing in the middle of the road with, I think it's an axe, and he's not making any noise. So there's no reason why the monster that's right above him should even hear him if he's being completely quiet.
It was drawn by, I believe, a gunshot earlier in that scene. So that's why it was there. But yeah, he turns around and is definitely quiet. And the monster is just
and the monster just attacks him, which he hasn't done up until this point in the movie. We never see the monster attack someone who's quiet, even with the mom. He was probably 2 feet away from the mom.
Which either means that A, it's a plot, and we are overthinking it, which I absolutely guarantee it is. B, the monster has very, 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 very limited sight, and it
could see a little silhouette,
or it could hear the breathing.
But then it still doesn't see the mom.
Well, you know.
In the basement, and the mom was 2 feet away. So I think because the mom was by the little waterfall in the basement.
It probably distorts it.
Yes, so I think that honestly, like, the dad was close enough that the monster could hear his heartbeat. And I kind of told you that.
See, water just solves everything. Go to the bloody cave.
Right? Go to the waterfall. There we go. And see.
And see. So I think that pretty much wraps up our review of A Quiet Place. Overall, fantastic film, fantastic acting, fantastic...
Yeah, top-notch storytelling and acting.
Pretty much everything. It's a solid about 80 for both of us.
Mm-hmm. And I would recommend it for most people because even though this is not my genre, I liked it. I would say that the only people who might not like it is people who don't like those survivalist kind of movies.
No, I agree completely. So overall, fantastic movie.
Mm-hmm.
Acting, 10 out of 10. Monsters acting, 6 out of 10. Gotta work on some stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been Media Snoop.
And look out for our next video. It's going to be about the movie with the similar premise called The Silence, which is coming out pretty soon here. So hopefully we'll get that up for you very soon after this video. So we hope you enjoyed it.
Have a good one. Bye.